Thank you, Dallas. Yeah, this is like I think of Interfaith as our summer home. You know, it's our home outside of home, isn't it, dear? Yeah. So we got married. I tried to give her this hand for my to put the ring on. She's like, no, that's the wrong one. She's like, this one goes to your heart. Is that true? Yeah. See, women know these things, guys. We know how to use a hammer though, right? And a level. Is there a hand mic? Could I get one of those? There we go. That's it. Popped. So, given the fact that we've been really busy the last couple weeks, I've decided to write down my talk, which is really rare for me. Normally, I just deliver extemporaneously, but I wanted to spend some time on this. I've been writing this for maybe the last week and a half, getting my thoughts down. I'll run it by her. How's this sound? How's this sound? And she'll give me her feedback, and then I'll go back in and write some more. And it's not that long, but I wanted to leave a time for questions, if anybody had them. I don't know if everyone here knows this, but I have, in 2009, after about 10 years of meditation practice, my intuitive faculties opened, and I began to see the human energy field. Now, I tend to think that we're an interfaith church here and that most of us have had some study of the human energy field. Can you raise your hands if that's the case? I mean, we've all kind of tapped into it a little bit, wondered about it, what's it look like? And it's, I think it's a lifelong study. It's something that doesn't have an end to it. And so I thought that this would be an okay talk to deliver here because a lot of us have questions and curiosities about that. And I think the topic of Be Kind, which is attributed to Plato, Buddha, and a whole host of other people. I just going to give it to Plato for today. So I'm going to go ahead and read from this and then leave a space open to talk, to receive some questions, if everybody's okay with that. So, be kind. For everyone you meet is engaged in a dire struggle against unseen forces. I want to begin this talk by reflecting on the atmospheres of the planets in our solar system. Each active planet is besieged by enormous cyclonic storms, megastorms that can persist for hours, weeks, months, years, or even centuries. A prime example is Jupiter's Great Red Spot, a storm that has raged for over 300 years. It's twice the size of the Earth and is the largest storm in our solar system. Is that fascinating? Like 300 years. But why discuss planetary storms when our focus today is on kindness? Many of you are familiar with the occult adage that man is a microcosm of the universe. Anybody hear that? I mean, you hear this idea that human beings are a microcosm, but really, how does that look? How does it work out? You know, they give you the adage, but they don't give you the background on it and tell you how or why it's true. But humankind is a microcosm. For those with the ability to perceive the subtle bodies of a human being, it's evident that the bodies of human beings and planets function virtually identically. This connection stems from the law of correspondences. The atmosphere surrounding a human being, often referred to as the aura, is the stage for cyclonic storms that can rage for moments, hours, days, or even decades. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, these storms are known as vitris, or whirlpools. Anybody hear that term before? Vitris? It's fascinating because they're often translated as modifications of the mind, but technically the word means whirlpool. Please do not be misled by the term whirlpools. They are not the eddies that one sees in rivers and streams. The vitris in the human energy field are forces that are equivalent to the most devastating storms on Earth. In Greek mythology, there is a monster called Charybdis. Anybody remember that one? A massive whirlpool that drowns men and destroys ships. It's often pictured as an enormous maelstrom with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Charybdis serves as an allegory for the constant peril that we face as we navigate the massive maelstroms in our auric field. Countless people fall victim to the victories and are metaphorically devoured by the great cyclonic storms of the mental and emotional bodies. We've all seen the devastating aftermath of tornadoes and hurricanes and cyclones on the news. Some of you may have experienced them firsthand. I hope not. But I have friends who live in Florida who have had to evacuate on occasion. And I have a couple people that I know whose houses and homes have been lost in those storms. The aftermath reveals uprooted trees, demolished homes, destroyed vehicles, businesses reduced to rubble, and tragically, the loss of life. These physical storms leave scars on the earth and human civilization, but the storms within our mental and emotional bodies leave equally profound scars and devastation on the human aura. Now, this is fascinating because we don't think of the human aura as something that can be scarred, but I want to talk about this at the very end. And for those of you who are okay with it, and if it's okay with the space here, I'd like to be able to spend some time looking through the auric fields and how people understand what that really means firsthand. I call it demonstration work. You know, for us to move out of the realm of theory and conjecture into like me looking and saying, this is what I see in your field, what do you think? Do you connect with that? It's an opportunity for this to bring us out of the theoretical realm into the world of how this practically impacts us. Make sense? So for those of you who are shy, I will see that and I will call on you. So the matter that makes up the auric field can be thought of as soft tissue. It's susceptible to damage and disfigurement. Just as physical trauma can leave a person physically disabled, mental and emotional trauma can leave a person mentally and emotionally disabled, with effects that linger long after the storm has passed. Consider, for example, the impact of unresolved grief over the span of a lifetime due to an unexpected loss. This is the one thing that I've seen the most in my practice. I've seen people come to me who have suffered loss that they carry with them 20, 30, 40, 50 years after the event. It's just like it happened yesterday. You know, and as I look around the room, I can see a handful of people who will really identify with that, like they've suffered great loss, and it's continued to impact them. Probably, 20, 30 years later? Is that how long it's been for you? Yeah? I don't know your name, woman in the... Yeah. Meredith. Yeah, loss, been a while. How many years? 16. Yeah, and there are other, you know, it's... One more time? Yeah, but this is, you know, it's 16 years later, right? And this storm is still active in our consciousness, you know, just like it just happened. I've seen families torn apart by it. It's incredible. At any given time, a person may be grappling with between 60 and 100 storms in their auric field at one time. This is unfortunately, it's normal. It's normal for a person to have 60 megastorms in their field ongoing at any time you look at them. These storms can arise, they essentially arise from our experiences, our thoughts, our feelings. There are unresolved anger, grief, conflicts, resentments, loss, thoughts of vengeance, unfulfilled desires, unmet needs, and more. They are the ongoing record of our tragic and unresolved experiences in human form. You know, I know some of you, you know, I think it's hard for some people who don't identify with their experiences. Does that make sense? I mean, in this New Age reality, there's some people dismiss those experiences, right? They don't identify them, they don't talk about them, but the fact is they still remain there in their field and they still have an impact on them. So, but they are a record of our humanity. They really are. While these storms may begin in the conscious mind, they move into the unconscious where they continue to torment and torture the individual and often become the special focus of a psychologist or a counselor or a therapist. I've used therapists in the past. There are times when I went through my initial divorce, I needed something to hold on to that was stable, right? To help me with this storm that I was experiencing in my own consciousness. Our connections with others can trigger new storms, amplify existing ones, create additional disturbances alongside the old ones, or even help the victories subside. These storms can also be passed from one person to another, communicated much like a virus spreads from one person to another, even down through generations. When someone is able to calm or dissolve the victories in another's consciousness, they can be considered a light worker. I use the term light worker because they dissipate these violent storms in the auric field, allowing the light of the self to shine more completely. The person might be a caring mother, father, friend, teacher, psychologist, counselor, or even a perfect stranger offering wise counsel. Though many of us believe in the immortality of the soul's powers can become corrupted and perverted. Consider the example of an innocent young child. Their experiences shape the nature of their consciousness and ultimately form their character and temperament. We've had school shootings recently, right? What happens to these people? They're not born that way, I don't think. I think our experiences can negatively impact us and determine how we relate to other people. It's a big issue. So, the powers of the soul that animate us to do kindness can ultimately be used to animate us and to cause harm to other people. It's unsettling to think that the soul can be damaged, but the truth is that the soul itself can be often crippled by these storms. Not just in this lifetime, but across many lifetimes. And I think this may be the subject of a special talk at some point, because it's hard for us to understand. We think about the purity of the soul, but the soul, I think, can be touched by our human experiences. How else do we carry over from life to life our identity? So that identity becomes enmeshed with our soul. So these storms enshroud the self for kalpas. Anybody familiar with that term, kalpas? Anybody? They're incredibly vast periods of time that are almost incalculable by human standards. There's no way to measure them. They're just huge, huge tracts of time. When we interact with others, we should remember that we either contribute to the storms within our mental and emotional bodies or help calm them. Kindness, then, is not just a virtue, but a necessity in the face of these invisible battles. And that's the end of my talk, but I'd like to be able to talk about this a little bit more if people have a curiosity. I know I host classes by Zoom on occasion and open up the floor to questions, and there's just radio silence or dead space. Happens a lot. Yeah, go ahead. So in my practice, I don't work in it much anymore just because I have a lot of other things that I have to do. But I tend to think that we don't tend to integrate our experiences very well. So the storms remain disintegrated, and they don't have an opportunity to be resolved. It's kind of like everybody has had this experience where you have an argument with somebody, right? And then you go home, and then you continue to have the argument in your consciousness, right? And you had the argument sometimes for weeks, months, years, right? And then it doesn't resolve because the circumstances are not there to allow it to be resolved. But if you call the person, maybe have a conversation with them, that can resolve the storm. I think people also carry a lot of guilt, which continues to create a storm in their consciousness, but since it's hard to talk about those types of things, or loss, I tell my son all the time, the things that we can talk about are things that we can heal. Okay, so that's probably the best way of healing these storms in consciousness, is to begin to talk about them. I think it's a good idea. I think a lot of people, even though they practice forgiveness practices, are not able to achieve true forgiveness. So, how many people Like had this experience. I mean, it requires being honest, right? That you'd like to forgive somebody, maybe your father, your mother, your aunt, your uncle, whomever, and you can say that you forgive them, but you don't forget. Anybody say that, right? It continues to stay there and creates a mark in the auric field that is visible. Okay, lots of things create marks in the human energy field. But if a person they get to a place where they actually do have some type of insight or revelation that creates forgiveness, and that storm will die at that point. Does that make sense? Go ahead. It's a good question. I don't know that I can really answer it. There are a couple really good books out there. One of them is Karma by Annie Besant. And then I think there's another one by Edgar Casey, where he talks about how our collective thoughts can generate physical phenomena. For me, I haven't studied that too much because I like to be able to have like the ability to ask somebody. So, for instance, let me look around for a moment. Is somebody okay if I just take a moment and look through their field? Give me so you're okay, and you're okay, and you're okay. Just give me a moment while I look. Just trying to find something interesting, where we can talk about it and it would make sense for us too. I think this is a good one. So I looked through his energy field. There's a storm in this area of his body. And if this is okay, I won't say anything that I think is going to cause you pain or suffering or out you in any way. I won't do that. But there's a belief in this area that basically says that people don't really respond to help. They don't want to learn. They don't want to grow. They don't want to evolve. Do you resonate with that? You can give us some of the backstory on it if you like. Okay. Let's I'll work this way first. Sure. So we can kind of see this storm, right? No, this is not something that has taken him off his feet, but it's something that he's been considering and thinking and working with. And it is true. It's hard to move the needle in 20 minutes. Right? I mean, honestly, anybody who's been up here and you have a chance to speak, you know that it's hard to get your message across in a short period of time. And then this message is lost in the other messages that come through, the back-to-back, Sunday, 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 Sunday. And, I've lectured from New York State down to Florida, all over the eastern seaboard, and it's still hard to move the needle. I offer a class and I have 10 people who show up. This is the way that it works, though. But you can move the needle of those 10 people, okay? Yeah. But, again, you can kind of see that this is something he's sitting with, something he's thinking about. As an example, my friend here, I look through her field, and there's this idea that there's a storm, basically, that says something like this, that I feel like life is kind of monotonous. Get up, go through the motions, get up, do it again, go through the motions. Do you connect with that at all? A bit. Yeah. Tell me about it from the bit that you do connect to. Okay, good. So this is something that you acknowledge that you were suffering with or wrestling with, and that you've taken steps to change that part. Do you see, like, we deal with these storms, we live in them, and we suffer the effects of them, which is, I think, isolation. But if I feel your energy field, I feel like there's a long-term isolation that you've dealt with. Would you agree with that? Yeah, probably a little bit longer than that, but we'll say at least 20. That's a long time to have something exist in your consciousness that you're struggling with, right? And it's hard to talk about. I mean, we don't like to be vulnerable to other people. We don't. So self-revealing isn't really a great option. And this is another reason that these things don't resolve, is because we don't get into them with other people. I have a couple of clients who are in their 30s and they think of themselves as failures. And this is, like, really hardcore. Like, I'm a failure. It's like their mantra. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, other people are so much more successful. I'm like, what people? I'm like, I'm approaching 50, like 1 year away from it. I'm like, I still don't feel like I've achieved success in the way that we normally think about it. And I'm like, by whose standard? But it's so deeply engaging their consciousness, they can't see past the storm. They can't see outside of it. Make sense? Is this helping? Let's talk about the scarring that happens. Do we still have time? A few minutes? Scarring is really interesting. These storms actually leave visible scars in the field. Okay? What's your name? So is it okay if I look at your field and, okay. I mean, everything is visible. Here's the thing. You don't have to ask permission to normally see a person's energy field. It's kind of like, oh, this is a purple chair. She's wearing black. The reality is we're all moving toward the space where we will see. It'll just take a while to get there. I've just spent a lot of time practicing. But there's a lot of scarring through your field, through your root chakra, sacral center, navel chakra, up through here, which basically says that you had to tear yourself away from your family of origin in some way. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Yeah. You know, this is something I could see in your field. It's something that leaves scar tissue. And what I found over time is every now and then I'll lecture on this, and I'll look at people's scar tissue, and just like you, they start crying because talking about where the scar tissue, it's like pushing on scar tissue. Anybody have an operation? They say that scar tissue hurts. Have you heard that? I don't know that yet, but I'm sure the day will come. But does scar tissue hurt? Yeah? Okay. So the scar tissue in our auric field also hurts because there are memories that are embedded within the tissue. Okay, but there are different degrees of scarring that happen in the energy field. I call it, it's been a little while, minor and complex scarring. Complex scarring can look like a burn victim. Like the tissue of the auric field actually has that kind of stringy, melted sort of appearance. It's interesting. But you have complex scarring around family. Let's see, I'm just looking around. Okay. You know, I just hope to bring this in front of you to help you see what I see for a moment, right? I think that we've all looked for a teacher, someone to help us see, right? Like for me, when I first started reading this stuff, I wanted to meet somebody who could help me understand what I was reading. You know, there is so much to learn, especially when it comes to the human energy field, and so much to learn when it comes to the human psyche and our growth and evolution, that I would encourage each of you to really continue the process of learning, and in the process extending kindness to each other, and especially kindness to yourself. Okay? Thank you for letting me speak today.